Hi, Anna. How are you?
Well, I'm at the very tail end of my allergy season, so my voice is better.
That's great. Glad to hear you're getting over it.
Yeah, that was awful. But I'm back on track.
Well, we can't wait till you're 100% because you're surely kicking it hard, even though you aren't. So
Well, I keep those notices, declarations, and testimonies coming, don't I?
you
Um,
certainly do. You've been busy.
well, you know, our erstwhile federal subcontractors have been very busy too, trying to preserve the evil British Crown monopoly on banking services worldwide. So they have been trying to basically enclose
No.
Global Family Bank by asserting that a British Crown Corporation franchise is going to have oversight of all our bank operations in Africa, which is not going to happen. And there's going to be some stuff coming out that will not be very complimentary to our British friends, but then the sources of acrimony are well established as it stands, and their continuing efforts to try to bamboozle the Americans are failing. And they're being shown up in international venues as the crooks and the schemers and the fraud artists that they are. So,
Sort of sort of like 1770 all over again, isn't it? Where they counterfeited all the colonial dollars, right?
well, yeah, it's even worse. If you're watching what's going on with the stock market and the Supreme Court, you will be seeing some very odd things, and some of it may be anti-intuitive. Um, they've overvalued every stock in the stock market to the extent that ridiculous doesn't even quite describe it. They've been pumping up stocks that technically really don't exist. There's no real asset company backing the stock, and yet they've been able to trade on the stock market and to post what I call presumptive values based on what they think they can make in the future, which is, of course, total nonsense. And it's misleading investors into thinking that they're going to make huge returns on investments made in these basically shell companies, which have nonetheless been allowed a position on the stock exchange. So I'm warning everybody, get out of the stock market unless you are prepared to lose it all. Okay? This is a run-up similar to what went on in 1929. And if you're watching the news, you see that Jamie Dimon came on and stirred the pot, just like bankers in that scenario did immediately prior to the crash. So they're actually trying to create a market collapse. And they are doing it with malice aforethought, planning to sweep in and pick everything up for pennies or less than pennies on a dollar after the market collapses. Okay, so this is just an ugly game. They've gotten a lot of neophyte or naive investors to play into this artificial run up of the stock market. And I'm warning you all, if you have any stocks and you can't afford to lose them, can't afford to lose the money, get out as fast as you can. Now, I've been sounding that alarm for several months and repeated it a week or two ago But really, if you haven't been listening to Grandma, listen to Grandma now. There's just an incredible mess going on, which is the result of very unwise administration and management of the stock exchanges for the last 30 years. And it's all coming down just about now. So that's going on. Other news, the U.S. United States, the British Territorial United States Congress, Supreme Court, just issued another pro Second Amendment gun rights decision that it's an odd thing, and I'll go into it in more detail after I get more chance to read it. But it essentially agrees that the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. I don't know why this very simple statement has been the subject of so much argument over the years. I think it's a specious situation and always has been. It says what it says. It does not require a lot of interpretation. The only word in the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed that bears a lot of attention is the fact that at the time the constitutions were written, the word arms did not apply to small arms, rifles, pistols, and that sort of thing. It applied to cannons, mortars, explosive devices, bombs,
Right.
and things of that nature. So we not only have the right to wear pistols at our hip and to keep our deer rifles at the ready or our shotguns or whatever else. We've always had that right, absolutely guaranteed to us by the constitutions. The only people who can suffer a regulation are, again, the public employees, people who have no guarantees under the constitutions as foreign citizenry in this country. So any and all regulations have to apply to them, not us. And the only way that they've gotten away with enforcing regulation on us is by pretending that we're Brits or Roman municipal citizenry.
Right. I could never ever figure out, Anna, why the shall not be infringed was so hard for anyone to comprehend or understand or, deal with. It's pretty
Because
simple.
it's because they've been playing this "who are you" shell game and trying to misrepresent Americans as British subjects and as Roman municipal subjects. And they can be imposed upon. They have no gun rights. They have no right to keep and bear arms. And so, of course, those people who are hired by or dependent upon these foreign corporations can be imposed upon. It's only our rights, Americans' rights, under the constitutions that are guaranteed. And believe me, the British Crown has set up a very successful but very fraudulent modus operandi, and it goes like this. They set up a regulation, a statutory law, a code, a regulation, an ordinance, or something of that sort that applies to their employees, their elected officials, and their dependents. And they put it out there and they say, statutory code AS.010.345 says that you shall uh, build no fence taller than 4 feet tall. Okay, they make up this stuff out of nowhere and they impose on basic rights and they apply this ostensibly to their employees, officials, and dependents. But they just put it out there uh, in the public, and they enforce it against everyone under color of law. They make it look like this statute applies to you when it doesn't and couldn't. Because why? Well, because you're not a British subject. Or in
Right.
the case of a municipal statute, you're not a municipal citizen.
Right. It's sort of the difference between the picture of Anna and the actual Anna,
Right.
right?
Where's the real cat?
I recommended to somebody this week who asked to go into court because now they have the courts have kind of changed their modus operandi here on Ohio. And I told him, I said, print out a great big picture of yourself and put your social security number in XXX dash XX dash your last 4 digits underneath your name. And I said, when they call that person, hold that picture up. and and when they ask what that's all about is, well, here's the person you asked for, and I'm just here under special appearance. They can't say that they could, because now what they're doing is they're trying to say, well, then that person didn't appear. Well, they're as good as the paper they're written on, right?
Right, right.
That's how I looked
And
at it.
and and I have continued to demand the removal of all district and municipal courts from within the borders of the states of the Union because they're not supposed to be here. And because the British territorial subcontractors have no authority to invite them.
Right. Beautiful.
So
Well,
hopefully
Anna,
we'll soon get rid of them. And that will leave us with nothing but the British territorial courts that don't have any right to address us either. Now, one of
yeah,
the odd things about being a state and having a sovereign status is that you have to have a police force or a law enforcement contingent sufficient for your needs of your population to keep the
right.
peace. Okay, that's one of 4 requirements internationally. And they're trying to say that we don't have enough peacekeeping and deputies and that sort of thing hired and on staff to meet the needs of the population. Well, I beg to differ. Our population is very small and we have a peacekeeping and law enforcement contingent in keeping with the size of our population. We're not required to have large numbers of people adopting our
Well,
political status.
right. And we have our county sheriffs that have a land component in their oath anyhow, and they're deputies, correct?
Right,
So what are they talking about?
right. There's more than enough law enforcement, and we have the ability to deputize as many peacekeepers as we need.
Mhm.
And the peacekeepers, by the way, do not have to be ASNs.
Right.
Our continental marshals can draft anyone from the general population who's willing to volunteer.
Mhm. Yes.
So,
So this weekend I had an opportunity to interface with my county sheriff department again, and and it was quite a fun conversation. I also had opportunity to give them the article that I wrote on the supremacy clause, of which the captain said that he was an expert on. And I was like, great. This will be a great conversation, right? And I
right,
also had an entire 7-page body of of Supreme Court stare decisis on travel in my hand. And I was happy to depart with it and give it to them and said, well, we can start right here for the discussion you'd like to have anytime. Just, and he said, put your name and your number on the back of the sheet. Sure, no problem. Right? So I'm looking forward to it.
Well, the surprising thing is that often when you spoon feed them like that and they actually sit down long enough to read it, they go,
Oh yeah, very much so. Very much
so,
so.
yep, that is it's always an eye opener for our public employees to come to face with their actual job because they're not typically told what their actual job is, and they just go along with whatever their higher ups are telling them. They're misdirected on a regular basis.
Well, I'm really blessed here in my little community, that my sheriffs here really do have a good grasp of what their job is supposed to be. Now, there's a couple that are, are more policy enforcers than they are peacekeepers in a way. But I had the opportunity Saturday to somewhat defend them and do that out in the open community and their presence here because there's a little conflict between our village police force and the sheriffs and a few people that would prefer to have village police and and so I defended them and explained jurisdiction of which the captain came up and thanked me. And the prosecutor said to me, you really do understand jurisdiction. Yes, I do. So, so it was a fun conversation and it opened a lot of doors, I think.
Very good. That's wonderful. And that's exactly the kind of knowledge that we need to be pumping out and putting in the hands of local law enforcement officers, district attorneys, any member of the bar, uh, certainly any judge at any local court, county level court, any state level court. All of these people are functioning with half a deck. There are relatively few of them that even begin to suspect the morass of criminality and corruption that they're part of.
Right.
And many of them are appalled when they really step back and understand what they're doing and who they're doing it for. They're absolutely appalled. Now, that doesn't mean that they can just get up and do something dramatic about it today. But as they come to terms with it and begin grappling with it, they do take action. And it may be as, a small action. It may be, applying the Constitution to a person who has claimed their rights under the Constitution. It may be, talking it up with their fellow bar members. It may be a matter of changing the way that they view statutory law versus public law. There are a lot of different things that enter into this. And I'm finding that there are many bar association members who are looking at tearing up their bar association memberships, or who are coming over and learning common law as a preamble to making a living in the American common law courts. So it's a very interesting transition and a social parameter that's developing here. I think we all need to be aware of and do our part, like Lisa, to hand this information to people who need it. They literally need it in the performance of their jobs.
Absolutely.
And I'm glad you reminded me. Lisa has written an excellent brief paper about the supremacy clause of the Constitution, which proves very neatly that, yes, it really is supreme, and it applies to Americans, which includes everybody who reverts and remands and claims their American nationality. Now, the point here is that, and I didn't realize so many people were unaware of this, but for us, it's a matter of nationality. It's not a matter of political status. It's not a matter of any kind of job-related obligation. For Joe Average, it's a matter of nationality, pure and simple. And the moment you say you're an Ohioan or a Wisconsinite or a Texan, that is the clue to all the foreign subcontractors and employees from here to breakfast that you're claiming your rights as an American, and you are letting them know without hitting them over the head with a watermelon that yes, indeed, you are owed the guarantees of the Constitution and you're claiming them because your nationality as a New Yorker is the real issue.
Yes, I did go ahead and put that article I wrote called Presumption Does Not Assume Authority in the chat. If anybody wants to download that, I just have to click on it and download it. Because one of the big misconceptions that are out there, especially within the court system, is that they have the supremacy clause, and that's why they can presume over the top of us. And it goes through about how the powers are not delegated in that way, and supremacy was never actually granted to the municipal corporations and to any municipal entities whatsoever. And there was only some limited supremacy that was granted to the federal government over certain things. And so it really goes, I think it kind of tracks through and hopefully makes a lot of really good sense for people to understand what the limitations of the supremacy clause actually are.
Well, I plan to be reposting Lisa's letter as a part of an article. As you know, I sometimes repost work by other people with just a little one paragraph introduction. I'm going to do that with Lisa's letter. And we're also looking for that 7 pages of right to travel information. There are a lot of people who need it.
I have that too, I can put in the chat. So I kind of keep just gathering, I've got a lot of resources that we
May I
just
for
keep
1 minute?
going. Sure, go ahead.
Yeah. So the thing is, if they don't use gold and silver coin, then they have no delegation of authority or consent, as it's called out in the Declaration of Independence. And therefore, if they don't have our delegation of authority in the states, then the states can't transfer their sovereign delegation of authority to the federal. So the federal doesn't have it either. I yield.
Well, that's a theory, Doug. But they are a separate government unto themselves. They're foreigners, literally. And their government does not necessarily function the way our government is supposed to function. The problem we have is that they go ahead and they, have their laws, their ways of doing things as British subjects or as municipal citizens, and they misapply that to us. They fail to recognize us and honor their own contractual obligations to observe our rules on our turf.
Yeah, what I said was in relation to American state nationals or state
Right.
person.
What the Constitution actually says is that the Congress makes appropriations, right? And they do so on full faith and credit, right? So they're relegated to having to depend on credit resources, and we, the states, are supposed to pay them in gold and silver. But they have created a situation by which we cannot pay them in gold and silver. And they had to provide a remedy in order to legalize this situation. And they have provided numerous remedies in theory, but they never actually produced programs and made those remedies accessible to the public. And therein lies the rub. They have failed to legalize their contrary policies. They have failed to legalize the Federal Reserve note. And this is something that I pointed out the first time many years ago, which then leads us back into the situation of we need to be issuing gold and silver coinage in order to have a lawful government. And that is precisely why we issued the American Federation dollar against gold that is owed to us by the British Crown and the municipality of Rome. So, pig in a poke situation, folks. But it is not our fault that we have been the victims of people that have masqueraded as Americans and pretended to be our government, when in fact they're just members of a corporation that is a service vendor of our government. And this is what we're all, more or less haltingly, bit by piece, coming to an awareness of and beginning to come to grips with. And I see more and more proof every day that more and more people are getting it.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I do too, Anna. I do too.
Yep, we keep at it. If we keep spreading the education long enough, it will reach every American. They will understand the situation and they will take appropriate action if we also make that part of the education. Now, I, being the Shinola censor grana of all time, look at the recent Supreme Court, U.S. U.S. Supreme Court ruling in favor of the Second Amendment, and I'm just cynical enough to think that they are making it very easy for anyone to go out and buy a gun and have a gun and use a gun without any training or knowledge of anything about guns, which is arguably unfortunate to some degree, because with rights go responsibilities, right?
Correct.
Our forefathers took guns for granted. Guns were as common as hammers or saws. They were tools of the American colonies and frontier. Nobody thought anything about it. You learned to shoot when you were 7 or 8 years old, and you continued to shoot on and off throughout your entire life. And so they took all this for granted. And of course, the earlier generations were familiar with true armaments, cannon, and other forms of heavy firearms because of the Revolution and because of the prior French and Indian War. So we need to understand our rights We need to understand what firearms really means, and we need to be apprised of the responsibilities that go with the use of firearms and guns in general. Because what they would love is to have a whole motley crew of Americans take to the streets with guns and give them a target. The British want a target. They want an excuse to claim that our country is in insurrection so that they can bring in the heavy duty military forces that they commandeered and use Americans against Americans, using American money to pay for this service. And this is something that we can never allow. We have to make our argument lawfully. We have to bring it forward diplomatically. We have to expose the Brits and the filthy Roman municipal government for what it is, for the corrupt bunch of crooks and abusers that these people really are and what they represent. And by doing that, we will eventually not only create unity and purpose within our own country, but throughout the world. All these other countries that have been defrauded and abused and bullied and had their natural resources stolen and had their young people killed. All of these countries have got a grudge match now with Great Britain and the Holy Roman Empire. But it's not one that we should pursue by force of arms, as tempting as that might be. The wise route is to expose them and keep bringing our claims against them so that the entire rest of the world steps back and says, hey, wait a minute. It wasn't the Americans engaging in all this war profiteering. It wasn't the Americans going out and bullying every other nation. It was the Brits using the Americans like a sock puppet. And behind the Brits was the Holy Roman Empire. Because remember, the Holy Roman Empire has a 60% share of the little joint venture that the Pope and King Henry VIII set up and which continues to operate to this day. You see how this worked? The Holy Roman Empire used the Brits as the muscle, and then the Brits depleted their own population and resources and looked around and said, oh, well, instead of us being the sock puppet, we'll get the Americans to be our sock puppet. So there's a very definite pecking order in which the Holy Roman Empire used the British Empire, which used the so-called American Empire that doesn't really exist. And at each step, the Holy Roman Empire used the Brits as a sock puppet, then the Brits used us as a sock puppet. And this is how it's been set up. But the difference is that the Brits and the Holy Roman Empire split the profits from their joint venture. All we do is get paid. You see, our sons and daughters get a payment of wages, whereas the British government and the Holy Roman Empire split the take, and the Holy Roman Empire gets 60%, and the British territorial government, or the monarch, the British crown, gets 40%. So they've been out thieving, murdering for profit. They've been getting away with it And they've been using our Title IV flag under color of law as a false flag and made it look like the Americans are these horrible aggressors and thieves, these violent criminals that come to other countries and attack them.
I've actually seen that mentioned on a few Telegram channels, Anna, where they talk about the relationship, how they've funded both sides of the wars that they've gone through and continue to collect the taxes and split them, and it's getting out, and people are aghast when they hear it and they see the proof of whatever it is. And so it is slowly trickling into what I would consider, although maybe not a very mainstream, but getting closer all the time.
It is. And when people stop, other people in other countries stop and think about it, if this is what the Brits and the Romans would do to their purported allies, what would they do to their enemies?
Right.
Well, who wants to do business with organizations that operate in grotesque breach of trust and bad faith? Is that something you want to do business with?
Right. Exactly.
So
Well, Anna,
more and more countries are saying no.
we've got quite a few hands up, so I didn't know if you had any other news or more news, more definition of what's going on with Africa and the GFG before we move on, or what direction would you like to go?
I think that the information about what has happened with the British Crown trying to outflank us and putting out false information in Africa is something that's complex enough that it requires an article where you can go step by step. And so
Okay.
I would prefer to actually write an article about that and take questions on it than try to do it verbally over the, in the format of the coordinator training call.
Sure. Okay.
So
All
let's
right.
go to questions.
Okay. Our first question that I have is Cynthia K. Cynthia, want to unmute?
Great, I'm here. Thank you. Thank you so much for entertaining this question. I'm here representing the Illinois Assembly and I have two questions. Many Illinoisans are receiving letters from the IRS, and so our education and notices committees are working hard to figure out a plan. There have been a flurry of what we call the 90-day notices. So it's like a pause. They say we've received information and they give a list of things that we possibly could have sent. And then they say we don't need anything from you right now, and we'll be back in touch with you in the next 90 days. We think that it's a result a result of the demand for performance letters, because we sent those out. There's a group of us that sent them out all at the same time, and those people have started receiving these notices, these 90-day notices. So my first question is there a response that is needed, or do we just sit tight for 90 days and see what comes up from that?
In 90 days, all of this should be resolved in our favor. So, the IRS, or the Internal Revenue Service, as the territorial version of this is called, is here illegally, reportedly collecting taxes from British and Roman municipal citizens, not Americans. Remember, the 16th Amendment was never passed. It was never ratified by the states of the Union. So they actually have no right whatsoever to be unleashing their tax collectors purportedly against their citizenry on our land and soil. It's illegal, unlawful. It's just an absolute crooked travesty of aggravated impersonation, false legal presumption, and improper operation of government services. These are supposed to be services. Once you realize that the 16th Amendment only applied to federal government employees and dependents, once you realize that you're an American and not dependent on them at all, and that you have your own government in session, once you step back, you'll see that the 16th Amendment was their 16th Amendment, not ours, was used as an excuse to import these bill collecting agencies, the Internal Revenue Service, onto our states. It was used as an excuse for them to set up taxation systems, foreign taxation systems, within the boundaries of the states. But they have no authority to do that because the states of the Union never ratified any such arrangement. In fact, they specifically forbade the municipal government for entering the states of the Union. The municipal government is restricted to function within the city of Washington, D.C., District of Columbia. And the territorial government has no authority to invite them along, which is what they did. They've been getting away with this because, like most things, they did it under false pretenses. They presented it either under duress or under conditions of deceit, as if it was a lawful demand from the government. They were operating under color of law and breach of trust. And so when we appeared to acquiesce and obeyed their trumped up demands, they said, oh, see, it's voluntary. We have at least 3 former IRS commissioners on the record, most famously Roscoe Eggers, who said all this was voluntary.
Yeah.
You didn't have to comply. And that's the only way they could legalize what they were doing. And they just got away with it for so long that they're claiming that we all acquiesced to this and agreed to it. But in fact, they don't have a ratification vote from the states of the Union to this day. Also, if you look at Title 26, which was never passed into positive law, never read into the federal record, never, ever, you'll see that the very first paragraph of Title 26, the Federal Code Title 26, which is the one that deals with the income tax, you'll see that in the very first opening sentences of this, it describes who the tax applies to. And it applies to people who are subject to the jurisdiction of the United States. Well, then, which United States? It's not our United States, folks. They're talking about the municipal United States.
Right. I always ask when people get nervous about, oh, I have to answer the question, am I a US citizen? Or what do I say? And you say which one of the 357 plus are you referring to? Oh, you don't know? Then I don't know either. So yes, I'm one of them somewhere along the line, maybe.
Right. And also, it's entirely fair to say I'm a United States national, not a United States citizen of any kind.
Right.
And if there's any kind of contractual obligation implied by the paperwork, I mean, any kind of obligation at all, you have every right to just cross out the word citizen and write national.
Right, exactly. Okay. Yeah, the 90-day notices, a lot of times a lot of people get those, Cynthia, too, when they first send in their revocation of taxes.
Right.
And they'll get several of those. And most of the time it's them just buying time.
And
Um,
so there really is no need for any action on our part. We can just like let that be, because it could become a circuitous thing. Like, we reply to them and then they go, we received your notice. We need another 90 days.
Yeah, yeah,
right.
yeah, yeah,
Okay. Okay. That's good.
exactly.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right.
And
Yeah.
and they'll probably get back to you. They'll probably send you some sort of little pamphlet talking about um, fraudulent or frivolous claims and blah, 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 at which point you want to remind them that the only fraud ongoing is aggravated identity theft of Americans and misrepresentation of, in your case, you say, Wisconsinites or Tennesseans, or, you want to use your demographic name. So you want to use your state name, your demonym. You want to say the only fraud going on is the misrepresentation of Tennesseans as U.S. citizens and are citizens of the United States.
Okay.
We're United States nationals, not United States citizens.
Okay.
And we're fully aware of the name games that have been played using similar names for separate and different things.
Very good.
Right. Before we move on to Rocky, I had promised Glenn Neefer before we started that I would let Glenn make some announcements that he has for Jill Mumbauer. So, and I didn't do that. So I want to slide Glenn in here real quick and let him make his announcements. So, Glenn,
Thank you,
open up.
Lisa.
You're welcome.
It's Knifer, but I'll let you slide this time.
All right.
Yeah, Jill couldn't be on tonight. She's traveling. So she asked if I would be the heavy. We have a new email address to send if people wish to get tickets. It's in the chat. I'll put it again. But the message I got from Jill was if you have ordered tickets, please return your answers to the questionnaires that were mailed out. The first email was sent the 31st. The second was sent on June 10th. If she doesn't get your answers or the committee doesn't get your answers, they'll take that as no answer, that you're not coming. We really need to get the answers so we can plan on food and activities and things like that. So we're gonna it's being cut off on July 15th, so we have time to get everything in place. We've sent out 260 emails so far. We received about 40 back. So that's not real good. If we plan on food for 80 people and 260 show up, there's going to be a lot of people going to McDonald's, I'm afraid. So
Yep.
I'm sorry, but Jill is one of those that when she doesn't get an answer, she calls me as coordinator, and then I have to listen to her. So please, guys, don't do it for Jill. Do it for me. I'm old. I have my own wife. I don't need another one. Um, you know, my wife's sitting here telling me I'm number one, but I, we it's a very serious thing. We need a count. I tend to make jokes just to get rid of the seriousness, but the deadline is July 15th. We've discussed what is going to happen if funding comes out, because there's a lot of people that have said that it's going to depend on funding. I'm sorry, Lisa, am I boring you?
You are.
Okay.
That's totally fine. I've heard this song before.
Yeah, you've written this song before,
I
probably.
have.
And
Um,
sung it.
but the if funding comes out after July 15th, we're trying to come up with an alternative that we can do something. That's going to be between a conversation between Lisa and Michelle and myself and Jill, and we might even let Anna be on that one. Um, since she's here listening, I have to say that. But um, and like I said before, in the chat, I put a different address for getting tickets. It goes right to our events committee. So it'll make things a lot smoother and a lot faster for everyone. Jill tries to send out emails the day she gets it or the following day, depending on what's going on in her life, which is kind of up in the air right now with her mother. So you know, bear with her, but you will get them right away. And I'll put it in the chat again, the new address, the email. But as of right now, the one thing we will guarantee that the main event will be on September 9th, which is the 250th anniversary of the Federation. And Anna, since you're on the call, Jill had sent you an email, maybe Tuesday night after our meeting. We had made up some logos to put on hats and shirts and things. And we sent, I think, 4, maybe 5 to Anna for her to pick one for the Federation to be the quote unquote official logo for the 2026.
Well, Glenn, that I'm the fiduciary. I'm not the entire Federation. I may be the loudest mouth in the group, but
Well, the loudest mouth always gets the work, I found out. So
yeah, right.
but
But
everybody talks about the Federation. It's always Anna, Anna, Anna. So you can take
yeah,
it to your crew there, the Federation, and say, okay,
yes,
guys, what do you
yes.
think? And as soon as we get that back, then we're going to push that. And um, we may take 2 of them. One is the official, and then one that we can use on other things. But we just thought it was right that since it's for the Federation, they should have final pick on the logo. So we
Yeah,
appreciate you taking your time to do that.
it'll take a couple of days for me to circulate it around and tabulate everybody's votes on that. But I'm sure that we'll get together and make it happen here soon, Glenn. I know that you're getting ready for this big event in September 9, even though it seems like far way away, it's really not.
No, it's coming real quick, and I the sooner Anna you can get it, I really appreciate it because I mean Jill's been banging her head against the wall trying to get stuff done. So
Sure.
whatever anybody can do, believe me, we greatly appreciate it. We want to make it the best for the Federation and for all of us. So we're working hard at it.
It's important, and it's a great satisfaction to be able to turn to the international diplomats and organizations and tell them, yes, our flag has been flying in Philadelphia for many years. And it has. And now the assembly is there, and they've been flying it since they came in session. And I love the fact that we're here and we have been here for a long enough time to have gained traction. So, God bless everybody, and, special thanks and appreciation for those who have held the national capital in Philadelphia. And it's just a very heartwarming thing for me to contemplate that you're going to celebrate the founding of the Federation on September 9th. And I have to tell you all that this has traditionally, all of these events that have been sponsored thus far as kind of family reunion for the assemblies and the assembly members to visit important historical areas and get to know their neighbors and fellow countrymen by going to these family reunion events that have been sponsored. They've all come back inspired and happy and regenerated and thrilled to death and having learned so much. So don't miss your chance if you can get there. It'll be a learning vacation that you won't forget.
Thank you for the kind words, Anna. We appreciate you and everything you do.
Well, thank you guys. It's a very humbling, often you're just left standing there going, wow. You always know that Americans are wonderful people. But I have proof of that every single day that I live. And that is such an incredible blessing and such a cause of humility. We really are a great country. We are a great people. And we don't give ourselves half enough credit for our generosity and our courage and our common sense. Americans have a lot of that to offer. And thank God that we do, because we need it. There are a lot of people out there in the world that have no practical experience about anything. And yet they think that they're the intelligentsia, and whatever half-baked idea or prejudice they have should be the ultimate rule for all of human society. Well, we're taking the responsibility for ourselves, and we're exercising our rights, and we are standing on the actual law, not statutes, not codes, not ordinance, the actual law. And this is something so radical and so unexpected that we are continuing to raise eyebrows from here to Beijing. And let me tell you, folks, as you are coming up to speed, as you are learning more and more every day, you are becoming the force to be reckoned with worldwide. Because everyone knows that if the Americans take back their government, the back of the British Empire and the Roman Empire will both finally be broken.
Yeah, and I have to say I've traveled. I was just sitting here thinking, I've driven. I've got 3 states that I've not been in: Alaska, Idaho, and Hawaii.
Well, we'll have to change that.
I know. But I have driven to all but the West Coast states. I've actually driven through all of them at some point in time or another, or driven to them. So California, Washington, and Oregon are the 3 states that I actually flown to, but have driven parts of them or a great deal of them. And so, travel is not necessarily as hard as everybody thinks it is. And it's in many ways it's not as expensive sometimes if you plan well ahead. And you're still in a window, you're still 12 weeks out from September. And things start to get expensive at 6 weeks. So now is the opportune time for everybody to plan their vacation time and their stay, and use the resources that are out there, as Glenn would say, hotels.com and Trivago and some of the discount hotel vendors that are out there. You can get some fairly good deals on hotels. And so Doug would tell you that I'm the queen of cheap travel. So I know how to do it and do it inexpensively. And you can do it if you plan well enough. So, and yes, Alaska will be on my schedule one of these days. So.
And if you can, bring your kids.
We'll see about that.
a lot of schools will give you field trip credit.
Yes.
For going to national monuments and writing up stories about what you saw, what you learned. And I can't think of anything more delicious than having our children educated and going back and educating other kids.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
I
Okay.
thank you both very much. Thank you, Lisa. I yield.
All right. You're welcome, Glenn. Knifer. All right. Rocky.
Sniper.
Schaefer.
How you doing, Anna?
Hi,
Um, I,
Rocky.
I sent you a few emails, and I'm a little confused on something going on in assembly. And I this has to do with what is really a militia commander? What is their position supposed to be doing? And from what I understand is, like trying to do CPR classes and teach people how to, you know, survive in different situations and that kind of stuff, right?
Right.
And my question is the militia commander a law enforcement officer?
No,
Is the militia commander should be running the General Assembly?
No.
no,
Should the militia commander be noticing people in the assembly?
No.
not unless it's something like, announcing we're going to have a class, or something that sort. But even then, the militia commander needs to work closely with the General Assembly and make sure that everybody knows what's going on and that the action is approved by the whole assembly especially if it's going to involve public outreach. And we just had a big question about this in one of the other states. And an event was planned by the militia commander. He was going to have a public event that involved outreach at his home, at his farm, and the public was invited. But the outreach committee was not involved, and the General Assembly never voted on any of this, and there was no official agenda or program for this event submitted to the General Assembly. And yet the General Assembly was the quote unquote sponsoring organization, and they were expected to pay for the advertising and things like that. And no, the militia is a part, a subpart of the General Assembly, as I have explained many times. And the militia needs to work with the General Assembly because the General Assembly is ultimately responsible for the actions of the militia, not the other way around. And what you wind up with are situations where skullduggerous, scheming federal agencies are sometimes caught doing very nefarious things to try to mislead, implicate, or accuse our assemblies and our members of doing things that they aren't doing or wouldn't do, except that they're being misled. And we've had some very notable examples where especially the FBI will hire or coerce someone to act as a snitch and infiltrate our organization and do things that are an attempt to mislead our assemblies into taking actions that can be interpreted as illegal or insurrectionist activities against the government. And I will just very briefly describe, 2 or 3 of the sorts of things that we've had to deal with in the past. There was a young man named Schaefer Cox here in Alaska, very young man, but an eloquent and patriotic speaker who knew his Constitution well and who still had the naive assumption that the government was our government and not a government subcontractor. The FBI got hold of a man who had a federal criminal history already and caught him doing something else and threatened him into being a snitch. and infiltrating the group around Schaefer and getting Schaefer to talk about a contingency plan in the event that some other thing happened. Now, there was no evidence whatsoever of anyone moving a finger toward actually implementing anything or doing anything related to this plan. But nonetheless, because this quote unquote contingency plan based on an event that hadn't happened and probably wouldn't happen, involved kidnapping a federal judge. And just because they got Schaefer to talk about this in a theoretical context, they threw the book at him, and he's serving a 26-year sentence effectively for a thought crime, which of course is not anything under American law, is not a common law result, but nonetheless, they tried him as a British subject. And this is the pretense under which they're holding this young man away from his family. Another really blatant thing happened where one of our coordinators was targeted. And the FBI and other agents came onto her land. She had a situation where she had like 40 or 50 acres of land, and she couldn't see part of her land from her house. It was over a rise and a bunch of trees and whatnot. She couldn't see what was going on in the back 10 acres or so. So they went in there at night with equipment, and they dug a hole and they installed a weapons cache with grenades and all sorts of things that, people aren't supposed to have, blah, blah. And they were setting her up as a terrorist, building a weapons cache, and they were setting up her assembly as an insurrectionist group, and they would have gotten away with it, except that one of our continental marshals was keeping a close eye and caught them at it. So what was an embarrassment for them could have easily erupted into a tragedy for her and for her assembly.
Right.
Then, we had the example of the Colorado Nine. These were people in Colorado who were, extremely well-versed in constitutional and common law, but again, were in that in-between land where they were still thinking that the government was our government and not that they weren't dealing with a foreign bunch of subcontractors, right? And so they had all of this, all these beliefs about the law and about America and about justice, and an FBI snitch from Texas named Michael Hamilton, who admitted to being a federal insurance agent, came up to Colorado and got everybody all huffed up and angry and wanting to assert their rights. And he got them to walk into a foreign courtroom and threaten, or appear to threaten, the judge with constitutional law and demands to perform. And they wound up with 36-year sentences.
Yeah, not good. Yeah.
Okay. And I tried to talk them out of it. I tried to explain why that was not something they should or could do safely, but nobody listened to me. So I hope you're all listening to me now.
Exactly.
Their name of the game is to create these sorts of situations where they have an excuse to claim that we are an insurrectionist group and that we are violent and that we're, plotting criminal actions against, whomever, politicians, judges, district attorneys, anybody that they can target or that they can claim we threatened. Okay. Now they have all the guns. They have tanks. they have drones, they have poison gas, they have flamethrowers. And we've seen the flamethrowers because they used them in Waco, Texas and got away with it.
Hmm.
So it is not to our advantage to give them any excuse whatsoever to presume that we are violent or anything, but a peaceable assembly guaranteed our right to peaceable assembly.
Right.
And it is not to our advantage to arm ourselves. It is not to our advantage to have any idea that men with squirrel rifles are going to stand up against modern warfare.
Exactly. Not gonna happen.
Okay? So what we have to do is, just as the Bible says, to be gentle as doves and wise as serpents. And
Exactly.
keep working and keep that discipline to remain peaceable and to keep making the kinds of progress that are beneficial to us no matter what happens.
Hmm.
And that includes community preparedness for disasters. That includes, you know, gun safety classes. It includes first aid knowledge. It includes radio communications and digital spanning technologies. It really includes all these areas where we can keep communicating, we can keep working together, and we can keep benefiting each other as a group.
Hmm.
Okay, so this
All,
is
all those
really
things you just said is what I think the militia commander is, or should be working on.
right. And the PKTF is a federation level communications
Mhm.
provider and networker, so that, well, for example, say that 3 counties in Illinois are impacted by a flood. Okay. The concept behind the PKTF is that the PKTF knows everybody who's in a position to help.
Right.
And when that becomes a problem, they're on the phone.
Exactly.
They're calling everybody. They're bringing in the state militia. They're bringing in the National Guard. They're talking to the governor's office. They're coordinating with FEMA. They're coordinating with the Department of Natural Resources. They're getting DOT on the job, right? They're
Right.
moving these things around to coordinate a multilateral, multi-jurisdictional response to a common problem.
Right. But see, my word for what the militia really should be is protect the people.
Right.
And whatever resources or disasters or whatever happen, we shouldn't be going after our own people. And
Right.
on top of that, the question I have, if a person is working for the district attorney, can he be the militia commander?
Hmm. Well, in what capacity is he working for the district attorney?
Exactly. Well, he said he works 2 days a week and he's a scriber or writer or something. I don't know the exact word or what he's doing, but he's writing. I think the deal is writing summons and stuff for people and stuff like that.
He's the
So
process server. I
process
apologize.
server. There you go.
Okay.
Thank you, tomorrow.
Well, a lot of people are process servers because it's extra money for their families.
Hmm.
And, it's just like any other job. The concern would be, is he sharing information with the district attorney that in any way is private information of his or other people? Is he engaged in a targeting program?
That's our concerns, is
I think there's a there's grounds for a conflict of interest there.
Mm-hmm.
So I would certainly have some grave concerns. Not that anybody's planning anything wrong, but we all have hotheads among us in our groups.
Mm-hmm.
People who get just passionate about things and let their mouth run. And we don't want a situation where someone is pretending to be a militia commander and actually keeping notes and maybe surreptitiously recording comments
you need to listen to the last video I sent you that he did. States out a lot of stuff. He also stated out that he owns or they own the Nevada Assembly name and all that, and we can't use it. And we're not the Nevada Assembly. And I mean, it's just a lot of stuff. You just have to listen to it. And we're concerned about all of those comments.
Yeah,
because
well,
as far as I'm concerned, the people own the Nevada Assembly. I actually have the document where we did a fictitious name. And basically the sole proprietor is the Federation and the people of Nevada. That's who it stated it's for, right? The
Right.
actual name. So the confusion is getting really bad, I think.
well, I already made it clear that the Nevada Assembly is the state assembly.
Right.
And the Nevada Union State Assembly is the assembly created by all the counties
Right.
acting
What
together.
what you actually told us is that instead of using the word Nevada Assembly, we should use the State of the Union, which is what we're doing. And then if we're doing the Union State, which is the county, we'd use Union State. So
Right.
there's no confusion there, right?
Right,
So-
well, yeah.
And-
And people should be able to keep that straight, I think.
Hoping so, yeah. We do as much training as we can on it and to try to make
Unfortunately.
everybody realize where we're at and what hats we're wearing, when we're doing something,
I think
So-
it's a very hard concept for a lot of people to understand that the soil and the land are in perpetual union.
Right.
And when you're in a state, you are also in a county.
Hmm.
And that all of the counties taken together like a patchwork quilt make up the Union State.
Right.
What a lot of people see is the word state, and they see Union State, and they assume that there are two states in competition with each other. Because
Or-
this is what we've been taught to assume since birth.
Hmm.
Even as young children in grammar school, it was constantly, well, what are the differences? Not what are
Mhm.
the similarities, what are the differences? And there
Right.
was this constant competition, this constant division into teams to compete against each other.
Well,
That's
what
how-
you said to me in the last coordinator call, I finally got it, whatever. It's all the same people, so there shouldn't be any competition.
Right,
And on top of that, we should all be working together to build all of it, not just, there is some people that only want to do one thing or the other, you know what I'm saying? But still, we're all the same people. We all should be doing this, we're the state, we are the counties, right?
yes,
And we are the Union State too, if we get all the counties together, right?
right. And
So-
people need to be understanding that,
Mhm.
well, let's see here. Where do I have my handy dandy? Next week, I'll find my little
It-
placemat and refresh everybody's memory about this.
Yeah, anyway, I'm gonna yield, so there's other people with their hands up. And you've answered what I needed. So thank
Okay.
you very much.
And
Take
I
care,
think-
Rocky.
And I think too, Anna, it's important to point out to all of our assemblies that it's not just Nevada Assembly or Ohio Assembly, that it's the Nevada Assembly with a capital T. You need to add that to your names. You need to make sure your EINs, if you have banking only EINs, they have the and your state name assembly on it, because
That's
that
how
diff-
our fictitious name is. It reads the Nevada Assembly.
Yeah,
because
then,
that
well,
differentiates us.
The Nevada Assembly is the state of the Union Assembly.
Right.
You don't have to say the Nevada State of the Union Assembly. You can just say the Nevada Assembly because that's what the state assembly has always been called.
Right.
Right.
But when you say the Nevada Union State Assembly, you are invoking the state formed at the soil jurisdiction level by all of the counties joined together, like a patchwork quilt.
Right.
Right. Anyway, I'm going to yield. So there's a lot of people need to talk. Thank you
Okay.
very much.
All right. Thanks. Mike on Washington.
Hi, Anna. I was wondering now,
No, not
we were
Mike,
supposed
not Mike. Wait a minute, Mike McGowan.
oh,
It's Mike on Washington, not Mike McGowan yet.
no problem.
Thanks. Go
Thank
ahead,
you.
Mike.
Anna, with the municipality going bankrupt and dealing with the city-state entity like the City of Rome, City of London, City of DC, how shortly will this reflect in the city at the county level to inform them that their city municipal charter is bankrupt and void, and the same thing for the county of entity? I yield.
Well, remember always that those municipal entities are identified in all capital letters. And I think that you will find that most of those entities have already disappeared. They've already been bankrupted and they are no longer present. And you may see something similar that is operating in upper lowercase. And that is because the reason that all these all capital letter name entities have been disappearing is because they are bankrupt. And that leaves us with the British territorial government being the only one operating at this time, even though if they're operating under a very similar name, like Municipality of Anchorage in all caps, suddenly becomes Municipality of Anchorage in upper lower case. And they're both incorporated entities, but one was a Roman municipal entity and one is a British Crown entity. So you'll be seeing that all over the place. Part of what our federation is driving for is the removal of the municipal districts and courts from within the borders of the states of the Union. Because what they were doing is that the British territorial partners were inviting their Roman municipal buddies to travel along with them and provide them with services. And then both of them would seize upon our property and us and pretend that we were dual federal citizens with dual federal obligations. And the British territorial government, which is supposed to protect us, would hire the Roman municipal government to attack us. And so that's why when they would bring summons or they would bring charges against purportedly one of us, it would always start at the municipal court level. And it would always be addressed to the all capital letters name entity, right? Because that's where and how they could attack us. The municipal government did not have that obligation to protect in the same way that the British territorial government does. So it's sort of like back in the Middle Ages, the Jews were forced to be the bankers and collect usury on loans because the hypocritical British monarchs and French and Spanish and other, Catholic monarchs were forbade from collecting usury, but they wanted to collect usury, so they used the Jews in their countries to act as the bankers to make loans and collect usury for them. It's sort of the same sort of situation because you've got the British territorial government, which is responsible for protecting our persons, using the municipal government to attack us and pillage us because they do not have the same obligation to protect. I hope that makes sense. But yeah, the municipal government needs to be driven out of the states of the union because it was never allowed to be within the borders of the states of the union anyway. And the territorial government, which invited them and used them as the sock puppet to enforce against us illegally, never had any authority to invite them into the states of the union. So what I'm working on is getting rid of all of them, shutting down all the municipal districts and all of the district courts, and just plain getting rid of them because they were never supposed to be here in the first place.
All right,
Okay.
great. Thank you, Anna. All right. I have Jamie on Louisiana.
Yo, Jamie.
All right. Sorry, you kind of caught me off guard there, Lisa. Yeah.
Tricky old
I don't
teacher.
I don't have a question. I have a bit of news. I came across an article on X today that was very interesting, very informative. Just give a few highlights of it. It's about the gold fringe on the flag. Somebody posted that 10 different things that people have repeated or put out there that about the meaning of the gold fringe on the flag, such as admiralty or maritime jurisdiction, or it means that they don't recognize the Constitution if it's in a courtroom. And it also put some things out, stated some things that I was not aware of. That it's it indicates that the judge is a military person, or that it's another one was some people believe that it's some kind of secret code that's known only to insiders. Now that's a new one. So there were 10 different things that he listed, and he said he's going to put it out later on Sunday. The truth about it said none of these are true. And this is he's going to talk about on Sunday when he posts about what it is according to history and tradition and customs and so forth. So I thought that was interesting. Also, I just saw on X that there was somebody somewhere has come up with an AI program to detect scammers and predators online. Wow. So,
Well, I will say the same thing about that I say about all AI, and it's only as good as the programmers who program it.
yes. Mm-hmm. Oh, Anna, I do have one quick question for you. I have seen posted a couple of times or several times online referring to what happened in 1933. We all know it with the traitorous Franklin Delano Roosevelt. That some people are claiming that back then, 1933, that the U.S. Congress divorced itself from the Constitution and suspended it. What is your comment on that?
They don't have the power to do that. What they can do is they can take their particular foreign citizenry and foreign government and basically say, well, the Constitution doesn't apply to us. We have to work under the Constitution, but we don't have to live under the Constitution. So it's basically a problem of you have Spaniards, literally Spaniards living in this country doing a job. They have their own Spanish government. They have their own king. They have their own customs. They have their own language, right? And they have their own law. and they're not covered by the Constitution that they serve under. They have no rights under the Constitution. They may be here working under the Constitution and providing services under the Constitution, but it's not their contract. The Americans are the ones that are actually covered under the Constitution. It's the Americans that have rights and guarantees under the Constitution.
Right.
Not all these foreign vendors that are just here as service providers providing essential government services. So they have their own thing, right? They have their own citizenry. They have their own political status as citizens of the United States, say, or citizens of Spain, citizens of Great Britain, British subjects. All these people that work for us are not party to the Constitution that they're obligated to obey. So, they separated themselves out from the rest of us, even if they were born and raised in this country. When they went to work for the federal service vendors, they accepted a different political status, not a different nationality, but a different political status as foreign entities, foreign corporate franchises. Okay? So in 1933, what did Franklin Delano Roosevelt do? What was his very first act in office? Well, he went out and he greeted all the municipal citizens of the United States, all these people who had unknowingly been enslaved as public slaves, right? And presumed to be owned by the Holy Roman Empire, okay? And he came on and he did what? He did his first inaugural address. And if you read FDR's first inaugural address and have picked up enough of the language and the concepts so that you can read it for what it really says, what he announced is that all those municipal citizens of the United States, all those so-called 14th Amendment citizens who had been enslaved as public property after the Civil War, were going to be sold. And he describes the process of the sale via clearinghouse certificates, AKA birth certificates.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what happened in 1933. The municipal slaves were sold back to the Pope by Franklin Delano Roosevelt. And he referenced it in his first inaugural address, even though it went right over the heads of 99.9% of the people who heard it. They didn't know what he was talking about. But we know in retrospect. Now, when he decided to sell all of those slaves back to the Pope and make a tidy profit, he did not tell the American people anything. He wasn't speaking to the American people. He was speaking to the 14th Amendment citizens of the United States that were impacted by this. So this is a good example of where a private corporate event and action, the inaugural event, placing their president in power, appears to be a public event. This is where the lines between public and private get all confused. because FDR, during his first inaugural event, was greeting all these slaves and telling them that he was going to use a certification process, a clearinghouse certificate, to sell them, to move them, to convey them to a different jurisdiction.
Right.
So that is the big news of 1933, was the wholesale theft and unlawful conveyance of millions of Americans identified as 14th Amendment citizens, whether they were 14th Amendment citizens or not. It's a horrible thing, and when you read it, you'll get chills up your spine because you will see exactly what kind of a monster FDR really was. It's not pleasant, but read it. I've got some articles, on Paul Stramer's website. You can use search words like, 14th Amendment citizenry and FDR and clearinghouse certificate, and it will bring you back up to those articles I've already written on the subject. But that's what happened in 1933. The other thing that happened in 1933 was the removal of the gold standard.
Mm-hmm.
And so that again was another big bite taken out of our lawful and legal framework.
Right. I found out about some of FDR's duplicitousness many years ago. Well, he found out about right before World War II, all his duplicitous actions, right?
Well, here's a good one for you. In May of 1930, the G5 nations all decided to go bankrupt, meaning the corporate nations, right? The citizenries formed from the employees and dependents of these G5 corporations decided to go bankrupt by treaty at the May 1930 Geneva Conventions. So all the bad boys in charge of these corporations, these government services vendors masquerading as actual lawful governments, got together in a back room and decided, oh, hell, we're all going to go bankrupt together. And guess who was representing the United States Incorporated at that May 1930 Geneva Convention meeting?
Yep, that was FDR.
It was it was Franklin Delano Roosevelt. And who proceeded over the bankruptcy in 1933, 3 years later? Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Imagine that.
Exactly. All right.
All right, that's all. Thank you, Anna. Love you. Take care.
Yep, you
Thanks,
too, Jamie.
Jamie. All right, Marlene.
Here I go, peeps.
Hi, Marlene.
Hi. How are you?
Tired. My voice is going. I was up all night, literally last night.
Me too. I drove 4.5 hours today to get to the west side so I can see my great-granddaughter for the first time since she's 7 months old. But that's not why I'm here. I'm here to tell you Arizona has a win on the Silver Bullet, and that is fantastic. And it was shared today on Doug and Christie's call. And second question I have that's important is I have a guy that he's a recording secretary. His brother-in-law he's from Ukraine. He's been here for 12 years. He has a green card, but it's currently expired. He wants to know, and I don't know this, that's why I'm asking, what paperwork and what would be his best bet? To reapply for a green card or a naturalization?
We don't care if his green card is expired. What we care about is knowing where he was born, how long he's been here, and does he want to adopt an American state as his permanent home?
Yes, he does. He's from Ukraine. He's been here 12 and a half years, and he has a full-time job, and he doesn't live off the system.
Well, then he's just exactly the kind of person that we want to immigrate to our country and become nationalized and
Beautiful.
become an Arizonan. And he can do that simply by, number one, presenting whatever paperwork he has that shows where he was born, you know,
Okay.
who he is and where he was born, his name, where he's living now, how long he's lived in Arizona
Washington.
or Washington, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's okay.
And he needs to prove that he's been somewhere in Washington for at least a year. And people usually do that by showing telephone bills or utility bills or something like that. And once it's ascertained that he's been in this country more than 7 years, that he has been in your state for at least a year, living peaceably among you, and that he truly wants to adopt Washington as his home state, which we do by the declaration that is for this purpose. There's a separate declaration for this. And he just has to come forward under with witnesses
Right.
saying, yes, it is my intent and desire to be an Arizonan or to be a Washingtonian or be a Tennessean,
Mm-hmm.
and sign it in front of witnesses and enter it in a public record like the LRO.
Okay.
And have
Perfect.
it, there you have it.
Okay, so clarify that the 1779 is the naturalization one or the green card one?
What we do is we do naturalization to our state of the union.
Okay.
And anyone who has had a green card has become a U.S. resident and may have been a resident for many years. And they are enabled, because they've been here more than 7 years, which is our rule. Okay, think of it in
Okay.
terms,
Yeah.
if you become a U.S. citizen, you can become naturalized in 2 years, take a test, raise your hand, and become a U.S. citizen. Or you can be a U.S. resident for 7 years, just living here in the country, and be naturalized that way.
Okay. Beautiful.
So that would be the 1779 for undocumented if they were just here and not on a green card or anything else. But if they've had a green card, even though it's expired, they can use the 1779 for green card holders.
Right. And they can, it's just common sense, really. Our states of the union were unpopulated, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they wanted more people.
Right.
And so they set it up so that if you could live here for 7 years without committing crimes and being a burden on your countrymen, you got the stamp of approval, whether you were a U.S. citizen or not.
Okay. That makes sense. I understand that totally.
Yeah. So
Awesome.
we never adopted other rules. So the old rules still stand. A lot of people from Mexico, for example, who've been here in the States forever,
Mm-hmm.
and are still afraid of ICE, should just come and declare and, come out of the woodwork and prove they've been here 7 years and say they want to be a Californian or a Texan or an Arizonan or whatever, and just adopt the State of the Union as their new country, their new nation state.
Perfect, Anna. Thank you so much, and sending you much love.
Thank you.
Take care. I yield.
Thank you,
Have fun
Marlene.
with the grandbaby.
One correction on what she said. It's it was in the state of Maine, or in Maine, and the estoppel document for the silver bullet is at 58 minutes after the past hour in the chat. I yield.
Thank you, Doug. Okay, Mike McGowan.
Hey, Anna.
Hiya.
I was wondering, now that we have we had the three federal contractors to start off with, and you've got back the delegated authority for both the land and the air. And the big thing now that Trump is doing the illegal tariffs, unlawful tariffs. What about if we had for interim funding for make us all, the anti-war militia that go out and do outreach to talk to businesses? What if we passed a mirror, like we all have the mirror things going on? If we did a mirror tariff and told them and give them the opportunity that, hey, you don't know it yet, but you need to be on one side of the fence or the other to determine, what are you going to pay in taxes. And so they pay the mirror tax because they're on our land and soil, because they're only here through the Residence Act. And then if they decide to go become nationalized, that anything that they pay in while they're doing that process and give it through the notice process or whatever, give them opportunity to make their decision. But while they're doing it, we could use that funding for ourselves, and we become not IRS agents anymore, but anti-war peace agents or whatever we call them ourselves as the militia. And so anything we collect and get receipts for, that could be paid once the exchange system goes, and we turn those in for the AFDs or heritage dollars based upon the vault value, because the vault's already been opened up for everyone already. So it's not really doing anything different other than would allow us to take advantage of any FRNs that people want to get rid of and preserve the value of, because they could actually pay us and make money in the long run because they get their value restored, even if they don't choose to convert. You'll.
Okay, I want to make sure everybody knows that a tariff is a tax. Tariff is just another name for an international tax that is customarily collected by customs agents. So the tax always gets passed on to the consumer. It's a consumer tax. So Mr. Trump has basically raised the taxes on consumers of foreign goods, which is a typical central bank function. So he stole some of the thunder of the central banks and acted as a commodity rigger of sorts, because he just arbitrarily increased the expense of imported goods relative to American goods of the same kind. And he counts this as a great thing because he thinks that all these foreign producers are paying all of these taxes to him. But what's actually happening is that these foreign producers are being forced into a worse competitive position in the marketplace, yes, because the cost of their wine or their cheese or their lace tablecloth just went up by the amount of the tariff compared to a comparable American product. So tariffs shelter the American producers and penalize foreign goods of the same type by the amount of the tariff plus the cost of administering the tariff. However, the person who pays it in the end, and who often suffers one way or another, is the American consumer. And that's why tariffs are, generally speaking, not popular. And that is also why all of our foreign trade partners absolutely begin to writhe and coil like wounded snakes at the mere word tariff, because they realize it's going to make their job of selling their products here that much more difficult. And the consumers tend to writhe and coil like wounded snakes because they realize that, you know, if they like Gevalia coffee, it's going to cost more. If they like French wine, it's going to cost more. If they like anything that's imported, it's going to cost more, a lot more. And Mr. Trump is going to be pocketing that tax for his corporation. And it's just that simple. It's a way for the government to do kind of a backdoor tax on the American consumer, because the foreign producers simply add the tax onto the cost of their goods in the marketplace, and anyone who continues to buy their goods in preference to American goods has to pay the tariff on it. You see? So that's what's really going on with the tariff. And if we were to entertain your suggestion, Mike, what we would be doing is adding a tariff on a tariff. And it wouldn't be just in the sea jurisdiction where Mr. Trump operates, it would be on the land jurisdiction too. So what you would be seeing would be a tariff collected in maritime jurisdiction when the goods come ashore, right? And then when the goods head inland into the actual states of the Union, away from that little shore area where they're coming into the ports of our great country, or airports too. Then when it got resold into one of the states of the Union, there would be another tariff imposed by us. And that would just add more burden to the consumer of any foreign goods.
Right. I was looking at it as just a temporary in the interim while we're waiting for the banking and the credit to be released, because in reality they've got, you know, everything that we would think of as American. You go into Walmart and, you know, all of it is going to be foreign, because everybody is presumed on a water bubble that sits on top of our actual land because of their presumption. So everything, you know, it would really be a national tax. And yeah, it would, you know, it would cost, but, you know, that's because that's up until they take opportunity to be nationalized, and then you would pay them back everything that they've paid in. So every FRN you pay in, you pay back in AFD once the exchange system is going. You know, we just become an extension of the safety vault for them. So, you know, we're just taking advantage of what is already due in terms of the prepaid credit that's out there that we're just waiting for. So, you know, we're just, you know, we're just doing a paper deal until it goes through and until they nationalize. And if they don't want to nationalize, then it's just an extra tax. That's, you know, that's okay. They're here by the Residence Act. You know, they're not even supposed to be owning land and doing all that kind of stuff. So, we want to make way for Americans, so let's pave the way for those that want to come back to being Americans, and stop with the evilnomics and evil system.
Well, you're seeing it in that way, but the ultimate reality is that it just hurts everybody. It just drives the cost of goods in the marketplace in general up, up, up. And as you can see, the inflation is already doing that. And there is no action to increase the hourly wage, for example. And they're trying to hold down inflation with one foot and increase it with another foot. It's sort of like driving your car with your one foot on the pedal and one foot on the brake. You see? And
Yeah,
this whole
yeah,
thing is going to be so, it's going to be so difficult for people, Mike, including all of us, that trying to take on the burden of enforcing another tariff, another tax, would just be counterproductive in my belief, and would give another little excuse for them to delay the actual relief, because they could turn around and say, well, you guys are getting income from all these tariffs that you're charging on foreign goods, which includes American goods, by the way. And so you don't really need relief.
gotcha. All right, I yield.
Thank you. Thanks, Mike. Rebecca.
Thanks, Lisa. Hello, Anna. We're still alive. Okay.
Kicking.
Yeah, and kicking. We're trying. Anyway, I have three things. There's good news and two questions. What do you want first?
Good news. I'll take any good news I can get today.
Okay. The good news is that over 17 states are getting together and we are having the most intelligent, strong conversations about standing up our governments. We are doing a seatment training on Saturday mornings, and we have some of the brightest, most dedicated people on these state assemblies, including coordinators, including people who are ASNs and all sorts. So we're working hard 2 hours in the morning on a Saturday night, super early for West Coasters, but there's a recording. And you can ask the North Carolina Assembly, info at the northcarolinassembly.net if you want those recordings and PowerPoint slideshow, which is all the information that we created on our team. Cynthia, Nancy, myself, Yulia, working on the team to bring all the statement documents that the two standing states that we know of used to stand up their courts, their states, and this week we're starting the court documents, court processes. It's a long one and there's a lot to talk about, but there's a lot of learning in there. And it's really fantastic to meet people on other states and have this focused discussion. As much as I love all of these, where you get random questions from every direction, A to Z, I also like that we all appreciate that focused discussion, and different people come to those meetings as well. So you'll hear different people. So that's the good news.
We like that.
Okay, good. That was a plug. Okay, I have a question, because on that training that we're all doing together, it came up and it kind of had a little bit of an overlap with one of your earlier answers. So on the counties, we have the highest law of the land, and also the last article you just wrote about the sheriffs and marshals. We have on the counties, the highest law of the land, the sheriff. When the marshal at arms, which is then the sergeant at arms when seated, needs to go across international jurisdictions, of course, they go through counties. What happens in a court that's a county court, where who is the enforcer and the peacekeeper and the law guy, man, woman, whatever? Who is that on the county court? Because we're looking at layers here and how the different intersect.
Okay, well, you have county laws, which are quote unquote local laws, right?
Right?
That's enforced by the sheriff. The sheriff also can act to enforce public laws of the state. And he can enforce the
Right.
Constitution. All of those. The one thing he can't enforce
Nice.
is federal law. And he can hold federal agents and federal officers accountable to their own law in his county. But he can't directly enforce their law for them. Does that make sense?
No, it doesn't.
Okay. Okay, here's an example of it.
The federal law part doesn't make sense.
Okay. There is a federal enclave of some kind in your county. There's a military
FBI.
base. There's an FBI office. There's a post office. Okay.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Post
And-
office.
And a crime occurs at the post office. Right? So the sheriff can assist in apprehending or providing a jail space for a federal criminal, somebody who has broken a federal law in a federal premise, right? And he can work with either a U.S. Marshal or a Continental Marshal, right?
Yeah.
But he isn't responsible for enforcing that federal law. They are.
Well, isn't apprehending and jailing part of the enforcement?
It is, but it's a cross-jurisdictional accommodation.
Okay, it does fall under an accommodation. That makes sense. But then sentencing or court would be on the federal level.
Right.
Okay,
You know,
I get
if it's a
that makes
federal
sense. Yeah.
crime that's occurring on federal property, and the arresting officer has to be a federal officer.
Got it. Yeah, that does make sense. So my second question is similar, not really, actually it's not really similar, but it is a jurisdictional question. And that has to do with the county organizer versus the state coordinator. State coordinator being a federation employee, county organizer being an ASN and vetted on the state level. How far is the reach of the federation into the county organizer? Don't vet, but don't train county organizers, but is that because the reach stops at the soil jurisdiction for the federation?
That's the way it's set up, so that the counties are isolated from international jurisdiction. So that the local people have complete control of what goes on in their backyard. And the only exceptions are things like the delegated mutual powers to mint a common currency. Say that we mint silver dollars and make them available as a common currency for all the states. And then a county decides, no, we're not going to use silver dollars, right? They could, in theory, have their own little, coinage or whatever. But that particular duty has been delegated. It's been delegated first to the state, and then the state has further delegated it as a mutual power, as one of the enumerated powers under the constitutions. So that common currency, that responsibility resides with the federal government. Or as the case may be, in this situation where the federal government is not in session, is not operational, the original federal Congress is not in session, is not present, then it goes to the Federation, and the Federation becomes responsible for minting gold and silver coins. So there are certain obligations that the counties have with respect to their states. There are certain obligations that the states have with regard to the mutual powers, right? And sorting all of that out just takes a little bit of time and effort to examine the constitutions, determine what the 18 enumerated and delegated powers are, and try to discern what additional powers are retained by the people in the states. Because you will notice that that is a small p people, which means the counties and the states. Lisa is a great one for Amendment 10. The retained powers. So they basically set up a situation where all the states agreed, well, these 18 things we want to handle as a group. We want to have all these 18 different duties and powers handled as a group. We want to speak as of one mind on these particular functions. That's the 18 enumerated powers that were delegated to the federal subcontractors. Who were they delegated to the federal subcontractors by? Well, first, each one of the states had to put their feather in the pile. So they all collected their separate power under the holding company, the Federation, right? So the Federation collected the right of the states to form a common defense. Okay, for example, it becomes the holding company of this mutual power, and then it delegated it to the federal Congress.
The states.
You see? So the federal government has certain powers, prerogatives, and responsibilities that go with those. The Federation has certain powers, prerogatives, and responsibilities that go with it. The mutual powers entrusted to it, which it then delegated, right? And the states and the people with a small p retain all the other non-enumerated powers and prerogatives, which is what Lisa specializes in. She's a great one, loves Amendment 10. So anyway, study your Constitution to see what it is that was delegated, and that'll give you a good solid grounding in what the states have to yield and where, what is the basis of federal power.
There's also state constitution. So you have to figure out what the people of the state delegated to the state of, and then anything not in that is also covered under basically your 10th Amendment.
And bear in mind that since the Civil War, most of those state constitutions don't even involve Americans.
That's correct.
We're not parties to them.
Correct.
So
yeah, they a lot of them, even from in my research, 1851 forward, most of those constitutions were incorporated even then into the incorporation language. And so a lot of times those of us who were incorporated before or formed before 1851, we go back to the original constitutions of our states that were formed either in the late 1700s or the early 1800s.
right, and bear in mind that a constitution is a debt agreement. Somebody provides a service or a good, and somebody promises to pay for it.
Okay.
Does that help, Rebecca?
I'm going to study some more.
Okay.
All right. Super.
Quick one. I'm sorry, a half a question. It'll take a one answer. I think a one word. I forgot about this one. Is a naturalized American a state citizen eligible? I was just told that they weren't, and I always thought they were. So that's a quick answer, isn't it?
Yes.
The only office that a naturalized citizen cannot hold is president.
Okay.
Perfect.
Super.
Thank you.
All right, Raleigh.
I'm in trouble
Good
now.
evening, everybody, and good evening to you. Hi, Anna. How are you doing?
I seem to be doing all right. My voice is still hanging out there.
Great. Okay. So Anna, I'm sitting with a catch-22 situation. You are aware that we are busy with litigation within our court systems, and we received a very damning legal judgment based on Meads versus Meads from Canada. They've actually attacked us on what we have been advocating to the world. And I basically in a position where I need to have a discussion with you in potentially requesting you to be a witness in our court case. The Meads versus Meads is highly damaging. I read the judgment, and then the guys in South Africa, the courts, they've also told every other judge or judges that any man or woman that walks into this court coming with a free man mentality, I'm a living man and I'm not part of your corporation and I'm not a natural person, is not going to be heard. The second issue is the issue of the mortgage fraud. They've also taken us on that as well. Securitization will not be used as a defense at all. Okay, and they're also hitting us with the mortgage aspect, Meads versus Meads. I did put in another case called the Tallinger case, same story. I did put those court cases in the chat. So I need to know by you, are you willing or able to assist me as a witness? Because we've got 16 cases that we can combine as one, and we want to expose this thing completely. I yield.
Well, it's being exposed at the level of international diplomacy, and the pressure is on them, and by them I mean the Roman Curia and the British Crown, to dissolve these corporations for fraud because they have no authority. They have no basis in law for their pretensions and claims of authority. They are criminal organizations engaged in inland piracy and fraud against their employers. So, I have brought the issue forward and demanded that the Roman Curia liquidate all of these things that they've created. And they have created all forms of corporation. Under all forms of law, the creator is responsible for the creation. And in ecclesiastical law, it is specifically stated that the Pope holds the final authority to liquidate and discipline any corporation. There's only one exception, and that is a non-statutory common law trust, which exists and has always existed naturally as part of natural law, and they can't liquidate a non-statutory common law trust. But otherwise, the Roman Curia and the Pope are 100% responsible for writing herd on these corporations, and the corporations themselves are required to be organized for a lawful purpose, not a legal purpose, a lawful purpose. And they must operate in such a way that they do no harm, cause no harm to the living people. If they cause harm to the living people, they can be liquidated summarily for the benefit of the victims. And the Roman Curia simply hasn't been doing its job because it's been making money. It's been making 60% on all of the illegal takings, you see. And so I'm holding them feet first to the fire to do their obligated job and protect humanity from their corporations, their creations. And I'm demanding that they liquidate all the offending corporations like Pfizer and Monsanto and Moderna and the U.S. Congress Incorporated and all of these corporations, the district courts that shouldn't be here and shouldn't be operating on our shores, they should all be liquidated. The bar associations that are incorporated, they should all be liquidated. The members of the bar who have incorporated themselves as franchises of the Westminster government, the Westminster government is in violation of its treaties with us, and all of those corporations should be liquidated. I've been out there, fellas. I've been, bringing it to the people who are responsible for disciplining and liquidating these corporations which have been acting in a criminal fashion. And I am exposing their self-interested failure to do so when they are clearly obligated to liquidate these corporations as a condition that these corporations are allowed to exist. There was a huge debate about allowing corporations of various kinds to proliferate and exist. There were a lot of concerns expressed at the time about the proliferation of S Corps, C Corps, B Corps, corporations, foundations, co-ops, and more recently LLCs and LLPs and all these other things. These have all been ginned up by the Roman Curia. They're the creators of these business models and structures. They have no right to exist in nature. God did not create corporations. The Roman Curia did. And the Pope sits as the head of the Roman Curia. So under ecclesiastical law, they are responsible for disciplining and liquidating these corporations. But instead, they and their British joint venture partners have been using these corporations to defraud and rob and otherwise steal from the people that have so kindly allowed these things to exist. And so I am down their throats like the proverbial bee in a bonnet, demanding that they discipline these corporations in a wholesale fashion, especially those that have actually harmed people in a very obvious way. Okay, so like the Australia Incorporated. Now, Pope Francis did liquidate Australia in all caps Incorporated, the municipal corporation. He did that. But now they're trying to pretend that they don't have an interest in the British Crown corporations, and they have a 60% ownership interest in all the British Crown corporations too. So they're under obligation to get rid of the offending British Crown corporations in just the same wholesale fashion.
Okay. Okay, that's exactly where my situation is at the moment. That is why I'm humbly requesting that you be a witness, because there has been conflicting views about these corporations. Now we know that, okay, let me first say this. South Africa is running on Roman Dutch common law. Fact, not an opinion anymore. So we do not, and with a degree of influence with English law, we've got case law, constitutional law, and then we also have this concept of customary law or indigenous law. However, the standard legal system in South Africa right now at the moment is Roman Dutch common law. Clear. And I am busy. This is a book called Law of Persons, okay? And I've got a book called Historical Foundation of South African Private Law, in order to comprehend exactly how I'm going to strategize this situation. So this is why I requested, with your permission, to have a discussion, to be a witness, so that we can bring this on record. Because as I said, the Meads versus Meads even classified us as lunatics. Now, and they attacked us on grammar, us bringing in grammar into the picture. They've done everything. Whoever this judge is highly problematic. But now South Africa and our courts have jumped on the same bandwagon. Now,
where is their authority to run an incorporated government?
Excuse me?
Where is their authority to run an incorporated government as a franchise of a foreign government corporation? Where is it anywhere in the Australian Constitution allowing them to do this? And you can look all day long and you will find no such authority granted to any commercial corporation. Period.
No. Okay, let me add something onto that then. We have political parties, okay? And I believe that we need to get rid of political ideology and all forms of political parties. But in the one political or two political parties that we know of, is known as the Democratic Alliance and the African National Congress. In both their constitution, the one they call it the corporate body, and the other one is called a body corporate. And that's the problem. If that is that is, according to me, a business structure. Now, it is, and if I look at the 1717 dictionary on a legal dictionary on definition of corporation, it says that it's a body politic and corporate. So they're operating in two spheres. But the problem comes in with the body politic. And that's the confusion. Up until 61, we were under the British monarchy. Okay. From 61, we became a unitary republic. Then 94, 95, 96, we became a democratic state, sovereign state. So these words is where the problem lies and where the misinterpretation comes in. So there's a lot of small factors that are coming to play, and we have a lot of conflict at the moment with regards to interpretation. So I had a discussion with the litigation committee, and we feel that in order for us to build a proper constructive case and actually expose this thing, I cannot do it from common law, okay? Because we don't have the authority for common law at all, only Roman Dutch common law. Now, we did have a trial by jury in the 50s, 60s. It was abolished in 1969. So we have purely a judge. And our constitution talks of administrative justice, and the other, I can't remember what the other word is. So coming to the point is, I need your help. I need you as a witness now, because this will hopefully stems any more nonsense, because everybody is saying we're talking crap in plain English. I'm being rude on that one, but otherwise, these people who are in court right now are going to get a hiding, Anna, they're going to get a hiding.
Well, why not appeal directly to the Roman Curia as the owner of all corporations on earth? including
what?
Australia Incorporated.
Is it the ICC or is it the Vatican Chancery?
No, neither. It's the Roman Curia and the Pope.
Okay.
Just bypass all of the bullshit at the lower levels by all these corporations that are trying to serve themselves at your expense and redefine you however they wish so that they can seize upon your property and treat you like a corporation franchise. Take it right back to the Roman Curia and say, you guys created this mess. You are obligated under ecclesiastical law to solve it, you and Pope Leo XIV. That we've had this British Crown Corporation here acting like the Raj in India since the 1906 bankruptcy of their franchise, not our government, their franchise. And this has caused harm to the people of Australia. It has caused the usurpation and undermining of our constitutional government. And it has caused great harm and suffering to our people that you are responsible for. And it's up to you to discipline and liquidate whatever it is, whether it's the court, which is an incorporated body, or it's the government of Australia Incorporated, or it's the Australia Incorporated upper lowercase version. There are all sorts of offices where these corporations are formed. Here it's the State Secretary of State where corporations are formed. You can also form corporations in the District of Columbia. Look up these corporations like Australia Inc. You can look up the source of the corporation under the company house, if it's a British corporation. You can look up the source of a state level corporation. Every province will have an office like the Department of Commerce or the State Secretary of State will have an office where you can register a corporation, right? Look up where these things are registered. Look up precisely how they're named and realize the court is an incorporated entity. Okay? And
I can confirm that. I can confirm that. They're on Dun& Bradstreet, okay? UK version and Florida. And then the RSA and the government of the RSA is on the SEC. And I got now evidence the fact that the RSA through the SEC is in actual fact trading bonds on Luxembourg Stock Exchange and London Stock Exchange.
Yep.
So everything's leading to this point. But the biggest thing at the moment is, and what I've also picked on with most of these cases, is that they're not bringing expert witnesses into their cases to substantiate the claims that are making. And the judges, again, like I said, the judges are just saying, you're looking for excuse not to pay, you are in financial distress, etc., etc. Okay? So...
and your corporation owes me billions of dollars. That's the actual fact. You can go to a broker. You can go to any stockbroker and you can look up your name under what's called a GMEI utility. And this is where they have your name listed as a corporation that they're trading. And that will show you all of the money that they are laundering and managing and reaping from having seized upon your assets illegally. And so you walk in there and you say, you have me mistaken for a penniless beggar when in fact I'm your creditor and I own my given name. And here's the proof of how much you owe me. Now, why are you not properly administering this person that you've created out of thin air to benefit your corporation as a franchise?
Okay.
So Anna, and Raleigh, I want to respect time because it's already
Late. Yeah, it is
Anna's
late.
time.
Raleigh, you
Late.
get in touch with me outside of this venue and we'll talk some more and give you some good ammo for this.
Okay. I just want to throw out one, Lisa, just one point. Crucidas, Reapers, Six Stantipus. I know
Yeah.
you meant we had a discussion about that. It's something I think that we all need to have a consideration about. Especially with regards to the birth certificate, because the nemesis is the birth certificate. Okay, that is where everything starts. Now, according to me, because we are going to take this to the Constitutional Court in any case, we're going to institute Clausius Ripus Six Stantibus, and I yield on it. Thank you, Lisa. Good to see you again, by the way, Lisa.
Thank you. Diana, go ahead, please. Just got two more, Anna.
Yes, hello, Anna. First of all, gratitude for all of your heart and effort and sharing your strength with us that we might give it back to you. So the question is, in regards to the data centers that you brought up, all right, so it's kind of one of those circular things. In regards to revoking the land use for the data centers, can you share more in detail on how the state assemblies, which are not standing yet, how they can interact with the counties that have at least 3 people that could work together as a committee of a whole, and combine that with the details for the states which are standing that can work from their own place, but yet together, because this data center thing is like akin to a natural disaster, so to speak, but happening through man-made sources against our resources, with our resources.
Well,
so if you could, please. Thank you.
Mr. Trump has just arbitrarily declared all data centers to be military installations. But under our form of government, Mr. Trump has to ask our state assembly to grant him land for needful purposes within the state of the union. And the county has to agree to have it located on their land. And well, on their soil, I should say. So 2 hurdles have to be cleared by the federal authority. They have to get the state to agree to it, and they have to get the county to agree to it, both. And in fact, the federal government has very few land inholdings outside the District of Columbia that have been formally transferred to them by any state assembly. On top of which, they have very few landholds that have been granted or ceded to federal ownership. What is more typical is that our ancestors gave them a use permit. And that's what underlies the city of Washington, D.C., is a use permit. If they no longer use Washington, D.C. for that use, they lose the land underneath it. They lose control of the land and soil underneath it. So if they no longer have a federal capital at Washington, D.C., they lose the whole thing because it's under a use permit. It was never actually granted to the federal government. So the same sorts of issues apply. Your state of the union controls the land jurisdiction, and your county controls the soil jurisdiction. And no federal military installation or other federal construction can take place above your objections. Now, they might have some grand slam plan, and they need a data center to say, provide a protective net of drones over your state. Well, maybe you want a net of protective drones over your state. But this is a question that you have the right to ask. These are questions that you have a right to say yay or nay to. You are owed disclosure from Mr. Trump as to the purposes of these data centers, and whether or not you support them is then your business. He does not have a unilateral right to claim federal land of any kind, never did, and still doesn't. So this is going to be one of those issues that becomes contentious, because unless they can prove to us that these data centers are beneficial to us, we have no obligation to grant them land or soil. Okay.
Thank you, Anna. All right.
Last but not least, David Harrow, Santa Cruz.
Anna, hi, thank you. And thank you, Lisa. Anna, I've been using the fact that when I was born, my birth certificate was taken by the bankers and two different bonds were created with my name in all caps. And this is one of the ways I communicate to get some, people to understand what I'm talking about. So I very much wish that I had a copy of those two bonds in my hand. And I think I just heard you say, go to the GHMI, and so on and so forth. But anyway, or go to my broker and so on.
Yeah, GMEI utility. And it used to be free to the public. You could just, click on there, enter your name, enter the social security number that was attached to you. And you could pull up a complete listing of all the trades that have been made on your name and how much money is held under your name and everything.
Yeah, I've actually done that, and never been able to really narrow it down to anything on myself. So I think I need a broker to help me do that, from what you just said earlier.
Right. And some of the, let me think. PIMCO is one of the big corporations that is familiar with that whole system. You can call PIMCO up and say that you're trying to locate the bonds that are attached to your birth certificate and social security accounts. And a lot of those used to be managed by PIMCO, and there's another big one. I want to say Equity Inc. or something like that. I'll think of it.
Okay.
But yeah, you can start nosing around at these big insurance corporations and stock brokerages like PIMCO that hold these bonds and trade them.
Okay. I'll take it from there, Anna. Thank you so much. Always good to see you and read your articles and learn every time.
Bit by bit.
Bit
I'll
by
tell
bit.
you what. Thank you, David.
Thank you, Anna.
Okay.
I
Thank you,
yield.
David.
We made it.
That's
We
a
made
wrap.
it. How about that? So,
I have only one other thing.
sure.
I'm doing my begging posture. I know that it's really hard. Everybody's suffering under interest payments and under inflation and all sorts of things. I know that. We're not having a very sunny time here either. And I have 3 big things I have to do here in the next couple of weeks that I need help with, and I need to hire some extra people, some extra experts to get the different filings and things done. So, you know, search around, see what kind of shekels you can come up with. You can send them in various ways. You have my post office box. You have the TASA store where you can buy goods and make donations. You can always send through Paul Stramer, who is especially wonderful about sending silver. He has his payment button, and you can send him an email and just say, you know, hey, Paul, I just sent you $25 for Anna, and he'll make sure that gets to me. Or you could say, you know, Paul, I want to send Anna around a 1 ounce of silver or whatever. And he will do that too. He's a wonderful, wonderful guy. And I think that over the next week, we'll be engaging to get rid of the district courts, get rid of the IRS, and get rid of property taxes because they're all illegal and unlawful. So we're working on some big things. You may have noticed that the Florida legislature voted to abolish property taxes in Florida. They more or less had to, because the 16th Amendment was the basis for all foreign taxes, whether it was federal income tax or federal property tax or any other kind of federally associated taxation, including things like the California Franchise Tax Board. All of those sorts of things were allowed by the 16th Amendment, and the 16th Amendment was never ratified. It has no public force. It is not a law unto this country or its people. So all of these horrible taxes that have been imposed on Americans under false pretenses and false presumptions are being reversed. And you'll see more and more action from more and more state legislatures running from the liability that these improper tax collections have caused. So I've got a whole bunch of things a lot of different things that are ongoing efforts of the Federation of States. And we're going to have to move on all of them kind of on all fronts at once. And I simply need support staff for, you know, about a 3-week period to get all of this stuff collected, organized, printed, and the printing costs and all that, which can be very substantial, as most of you know, having sent in notices and things of your own. So I've got these special projects that are kind of bearing down on me. And I would appreciate it if you can find it in your hearts to scout up a few extra shekels for me the coming week or two. And I thank you very much. Thank you all for being here. And thank you all for caring. I thank you all for your devotion to your country and to your state and to your communities. I think you're all the best in the whole wide world. And I love you all dearly. And I just want to say a big congratulations. It's because of you that we have international traction. It's because of you leading the way that people all over the world are making efforts to free themselves from the British Raj that has attached itself to their own countries. So you can be very proud of your role in helping to free not just this country, but the entire earth from the scourge of the corrupt Roman Empire and the corrupt British Empire, both. It's a big job, but somebody's got to do it.
All right, Anna. Thank you so much for this evening. We really appreciate it. We love you. Keep getting well, and we'll see you next week.
That's the plan.
All right.
Take
Lisa,
care,
may
Marlene.
I real quick make a comment? If
Sure.
everyone looks on their Department of Revenue, lost money or found money or something like that, I found $1,000 last week by a fluke. So it could be like you moved and you lost, had your cable TV turned off or your internet and they couldn't locate you, so they have to turn it over to the state money. But yeah, it's worth a check, you guys. I love y'all. Bye.
Bye-bye, Marlene. Thank you.
All right. Good night, everyone.
Good night, guys.
Good night, Anna. Good night, everyone.
Good night, dear.
Lisa,
Good night, Anna.
Lisa,
Yes.
Lisa.
Yes.
How far is your you remember you said on the driver's license, how far is your feedback from the municipality or the government regarding putting that code, was it, I think it was code 99? I just can't remember the phrasing now. How did that go so far?
So far we've not had any response from it, but we will probably soon.
Okay. So just a bit of feedback from South Africa. We have a big problem. Lisa, we do have a big problem. I just found now, because we had a woman that that did in the private number plates, gave notifications and everything, and they basically wanted to arrest her. They removed the number plates. They wanted to impound a vehicle. Okay. Then, because I've been telling to everybody in South Africa, we have to first go and research our statutes. We've got to comprehend how the system was functioning and operating, what formal rules were put in place. Now, and I was busy going through the statute, and I found the Orange Free State's motor vehicle or motor car ordinance, okay, of 1914. And the unfortunate thing is, already in 1914, we had to get a certificate, a driver's certificate, and a motor vehicle license. So it doesn't go with what you guys are going through with regards having not to, have your vehicles treated as commercial. So that is why I mentioned the Concealers Stantibus, because we want to cancel the contract. And just for interest's sake, we are part of the British Commonwealth. We were brought back in 94 through the British Nationality Act, and there's another act that they brought in, South African Act. They brought us back under the Commonwealth. So I'm going to use that because the Concealers is between states. So I'm going to use that because we're part of the British Commonwealth as a starting point to have this contract reviewed, rescinded, or altered. This is insanity. This thing is insanity. And there is no ways we can continue. I yield.
It is. Thank you, Raleigh. Good night, everyone. I have to
All
go.
right.
All right. Thank you.
Cool.
Good
All right.
night.
Bye-bye.
Okay,
Good
ciao.
night.